So the first question that I have, Steve, it's one that I just wanted you to talk briefly about. We're not here to talk about your tack. We're not here to talk about your saddles. Of course, if it comes up, great. But we did release the downhill hip saddle. We put that up on the website, and there's been people who have been buying that. Really quickly, I just want you to talk about the downhill hip saddle because I know that it's really important when we're talking about, well, I'll let you talk about it. Why is it important? Why does it matter?
Well, it's not really the saddle, it's the saddle pad.
Thank you for correcting me. Appreciate that.
Now, no pad is going to correct an ill-fitting saddle. You know, with the horse bars, those have a twist, and no saddle is going to take away that twist on those bars. So having my bars the way I've designed them, where they come up in the front, is really important, and you can see that on a lot of my YouTubes, and that's really important. But what I've done with this pad, if we took and we added to the bars of our saddle enough to make the saddle go from being straight, being from crooked, what downhill hip is, the hip is higher than the wither. And you'll see some of my articles in Mules and More magazine, and you'll see some of this information on YouTube as well. But when it's high like this, then we have to build up the front of that to balance up the saddle. The downside is a lot of folks will take saddles and move around the pads to make it fit. And unfortunately, they end up creating problems with the mule spine. So what we did, you would normally have to have the front of the bar is usually about an inch, and the back of the bar is, I said an inch, more like a half an inch. So you would have to take the front of the bar and raise it up almost 2 inches. So you'd have a really ugly bar, and there's no real way to make skirting for the saddle to make it work. So, and you don't want to build a saddle just for one mule, folks. You know, that mule may outlast you, but may not. Lots of things can happen. Just because they're a mule don't mean they're not immune to death and sickness. So going back, so we took a pad and we've changed foam, we've messed around with it, tried to make it work, and now we got a really good pad that is high in the front and it slopes in the back, and so we've got even pressure clear across the back. And when I say even pressure, it's not like a foam that will have like memory foam. It's not like that. It follows my bar really nice and works really good on my saddles. And now I don't know about other saddles. I can tell you that, again, when people call me and want the downhill hip pad, I tell them my pad is not going to fix your saddle problem. So that's what I've done. A lot of people that have got it right now, a lot of people have really been happy with it. And what it amounts to is it's how we're breeding. Look at some of your jacks when you're breeding. I was reading this article in this magazine here the other day, and they showed a picture of a horse, a mule, and a donkey, and you can see that hip was higher on this donkey, their jack, than the wither. And so you want to, folks, when you're breeding, make sure you have a clean back. Confirmation is there on the shoulders and on the hips. But that's what we've done. We keep trying things, as you know, Dave, to try to help Mr. Mule get through life and be comfortable. And comfortable is what's important.
Yeah, that's pretty much all he wants is to be comfortable.
Yeah, comfortable.
But isn't that the way it is for all of us?
Yeah, I mean, I've got my big old cushy chair. I plop back in there, you know, at the end of the day. You bet. Hey, is Mike from Fabtron out there?
I have not seen him yet. I have not seen Mike yet, but hopefully he'll be joining us.
Yeah, good deal. What other questions do we have?
We have Tracy Foley, though. Tracy joined in, and she says hello. So hello, Tracy. Glad to have you here.
Hey, Tracy, you bet.
So the next thing that I want to talk about, it's a two-part question. So I know that cinches is something that folks get mixed up on quite a bit because what you want for your cinches with a horse is different than you want your cinches for a mule and a donkey. So the first thing I want to ask you is, with all the cinch questions coming in that we've had, is you've got different size cinches. How do you measure up the right size cinch for your mule. And I know that you want it tighter in the front, looser in the back. That's a little bit of a head tilt for a lot of people because that's a little bit contrary to what they've known with horses. So talk about cinches for me.
Yeah, we really want the front cinch to be the loosest, the back cinch to be the tightest. That's imperative. I have made cinches. I have bought cinches. I've been cinch poor. So as I started working at this, I started designing my own cinches. And what we want, when that goes against the animal, we want sweat. The more the animal's back sweats and the more his belly sweats, the better, because those are the two places that are solid on the animal all the time. And that sweat creates moisture, which creates a way to keep the animal's back cool and a way to be able to lubricate it. Both things are important. So on a mule, you want a wide cinch in the back. That is important. How you measure it is with your saddle on the mule, measure from D-ring to D-ring. The safest way to do it is to take a string and measure from the D-ring and go around to the middle of the body and get that measurement and do the same thing on the other side. Should be identical, the same. But usually what I tell people is this. Let's say you have a 15-hand mule and you tell me he's quarter type. I'm going to tell you to put a 34-inch cinch on the front and a 38 cinch on the back. And the reason that is your mules are wider in the back end. Plus, on my saddles and on a lot of saddles, the D-rings are a little bit different in height. So when you take and you measure it, that's the best way to do it. And usually if you just call me and say, hey, Steve, my mule's ABC, I'll tell you what cinches you need. And usually I hit it pretty much close right on the button.
Yeah, that is true. Steve's always looking to hop on the phone. So I can attest to that. He's always walking around the ranch, doing a whole bunch of things. If he's got his phone near him, he's ready to hop on and talk. That's how we do a lot of stuff too. I'll say, hey, Steve, I need to ask you a few questions. Well, partner, give me a call. And so I'll give a call. You'll be walking around the ranch, and I'll get my mule questions answered as well. We had Anna Curry hop in, and she had a question that you were asked a few weeks ago. So Anna, I will provide a link back to that question, but answer it real quick again for me, Steve. Maybe not in as much detail, but are mules more prone to horse diseases or more prone to donkey illnesses?
Both are the same. They're equine. You know, they can all have sarcoids, which is a young mule disorder with ugly spots on their nose and on their chest. They can all have feet problems. They can all have intestinal problems. When you look at the intestine of a donkey, look at the intestine of a horse, they're the same, you know. So there's no such thing. You know, a lot of people buy the mule because they figure he's bulletproof. He's not going to colic. Oh, yeah, he'll colic. You bet. You know, the biggest problem that we have when it comes down to this is our feed. There's a lot of salmonella in the feed, and so we're inadvertently feeding impure foods, and then we end up, boom, with a problem. But don't buy a mule thinking that they are bulletproof. You're going to have foot diseases. You're going to have stomach and colic problems, and, you know, eye problems. They're all the same. You know, donkey, mule, horse are all the same.
Cool. Thanks for answering that. So the second part, you talked about cinches. The second part that I had a question about, because it came in related to a cinch question, is setting up a saddle. A lot of folks, they'll do all this research about what saddle's best. They'll watch all your YouTube videos. They'll talk with different friends. They'll talk with family. They'll talk with the mule expert or the equine expert in their circle. They'll go buy that saddle, but then they don't necessarily know how to set up that saddle properly. I know that this is something that you're pretty passionate about. You even made a point to me to say, hey, Dave, we need to talk about this the next live stream. So talk to me a little bit about what people's expectations should be when it comes to they've researched, they've bought that saddle, they bought one of your saddles that are fitted for a mule. They get it in the mail, they open it up. What do they do next?
Oh, boy. You know, this is the biggest question that I have, Dave, is saddle fit, what to do about it. I was so frustrated. I looked in this particular, I'm not going to say magazine or book or whatever, but I looked, and here was this nice looking young lady with this gorgeous saddle. I mean, this saddle had silver on it. It was hand carved. It was great. Sitting on this mule that was immaculate. You can see they had shaved it, and she had this nice ribbon, and she was happy. The mule's ears were up because somebody was in front waving at the arm. The first thing I saw was the saddle sitting directly on top of the scapula, right up there like you do a horse. And then underneath the leg, the cinch was right against the leg. But here's what else I saw. In the picture, the right front leg was up a little bit and kind of out front. This mule was saying, boy, my right leg is really bothering me. Well, you think about it. Every time that scapula comes up, it's hitting. And that mule doesn't show pain like a horse does. Now, don't get me wrong. I can't completely say that. They do eventually start showing pain, but people will go months or even years. I had a guy I talked to yesterday. I just bought one of my saddles. He says, Steve, when I go to put the saddle on the mule walks backwards. And I said, yeah, he's trying to tell you my back's sore. And you told me earlier that you had run your hand down and palpated it, and the mule sunk his back trying to get away from the pain. And what I told David, his name is David, I told him, I said, David, don't ride your mule. Number one, go get your teeth floated. Get that done, because that really impacts that mule's back. If he drops his head, and that lower shelf drops, it's perfect. But if it don't drop, we got a TMJ problem. That's a whole other thing. So get the teeth floated. I said the second thing, go to a chiropractor, because here's the problem. People are just like this lady. She's got her ribbon. She looks really smart, and she's happy, but her mule has just been beat to death, and you can see in the picture that mule's right leg just ahead just a little bit. And I'm thinking, that poor mule, beautiful saddle. I mean, that saddle had to cost $5,000. No rear cinch, only a front cinch, and only a billet. And I tell you what I see when I go to these shows, and that's why I don't go to them much anymore. I see people pull their saddles off and cinch sores all up in here where they have, the saddle's too far forward. Folks, you don't care if you're flat ground or not, you got to have a breeching. So here, and you got to have that back cinch tight. So number one, here's your scapula. You put that saddle up there, boom, boom, boom. Your saddle should sit 2 inches, inch and a half on an average, but 2 inches behind the scapula. If the saddle is made correctly, you're going to have 3 to 4 fingers in front of the cinch. That cinch should not be up in the front. It should not be on that animal's leg. I had a lady call me the other day, and she says, well, I don't have a rear cinch. And I said, ma'am, you cannot fix the problem with your saddle going forward, because that saddle is going to cantilever and go forward. And I'm going to tell you, Dave, out of 10 emails a day, 5 of them really easy, are mules in distress because they've placed the saddles incorrectly, or they decided they didn't want to use a rear cinch, or they decided they only want to use a crouper. And you can use my 40 years of experience, or you can keep on pounding away.
Yeah, one thing that I've learned is that you talk about it, the mule doesn't show the discomfort. What I think, the way that I would articulate it is they show their discomfort in ways that we might not be accustomed to seeing. They show their discomfort in behavior that we don't necessarily associate with a poor saddle fit. We think that it's something else. Why is my mule backing up, or why is he running fast, or why is my mule doing this? And it is really funny. A lot of times when we'll have that, you'll say, well, tell me about your saddle. And well, what does that have to do with any of it? Or tell me about your breeching. Well, or you'll say, you're probably not riding with a breeching, are you? No, I'm not. Well, that's why. And so they display their discomfort in ways that maybe you wouldn't see with the horse. So they display their discomfort in ways that we think as humans, that don't mean nothing. But as we've learned, like the mule communicates different than the horse, and it certainly communicates a whole lot different than people do, right?
Yeah, and one of the things you can look at is you can see the front legs on the mule. And if you see one leg in front, that means he's trying to take the pressure off of that leg. They usually will always stand square unless they're going to rest, and then they'll cock a rear leg. They'll cock it one way or the other. But the front end, they're going to stay square. If I could show you this picture, which I don't want to do, you would see the front leg just in front of that animal. That's telling me that this mule is really hurting in its legs or shoulder, you know. And usually if it's a big old heavy silver saddle like that, and this lady is pounding on that scapula, and it's a shame. And I can't tell you how many people, you know, call me, and now the vet has worked on it. I had one veterinarian in Michigan work on this guy's mule, and he spent $15,000 for that mule, you know, and $2,000 worth of vet bills because of it was a custom-made mule saddle, and it didn't get it, you know, but yeah. I would have never designed my saddles, Dave, and I never thought I'd be selling them, you know. I thought me and my cowboys here at the ranch, we were making them for us and for our animals, you know. And then, wham, I started going to these clinics and say, look what happens. You take my saddle and put it on there. But let's don't belabor that anymore. It's frustrating.
Well, you got David Pengelly here saying, do you have a cure for white line? I don't know what white line is. And by the way, welcome, David. Glad to have you here. Do you have a cure for white line? What is it?
Dave has awesome coffee. Let me get that point in there right off the bat. This guy sends me coffee that he roasts, and it is incredible. The whole house. I'm not going to get into it, but it's beautiful.
Well, White line. Some of that coffee because I left a cable out at your mule ranch last month, and I need to come back and get it. We've been trying to connect when you're here in town because I'm a city slicker. You're a country boy. So I need to come out to the country and get me some of that coffee, pick up my cable, and spend some time out there.
There you go. Well, at my clinic, I'm going to have that coffee brewing. And let me tell you, when you smell that, the neighbors start showing up. It's incredible, let alone the taste. You know, you don't want to put any milk or sugar in it because you'll ruin it. It's just, and usually I put sugar in it, but it's gorgeous. Anyway, David, white Lyme's disease is right now we have no cure for it. We don't completely know why it came about. We are, you know, very much considering a lot of wetness and a lot of, I can't think of the name of the, anyway, a lot of germs and this sort of thing. Here's what happens. Here's the foot. Here's the outside wall. This is the lamina or the white line. And then this is what's called the coffin bone. This part right here in the middle, this part of it right here, okay? That's called the white line, and it's fibrous. And it is the shock absorber from the outside wall to the coffin bone. And the coffin bone is exactly the word. Because if your animal is not shod right, that's number one. If it's not trimmed, that's number two. And if the saddle continually to pounds on this mule scapula, this coffin bone starts rotating. And when he rotates, he's done. He's crippled. And so this white Lyme's disease right here, we get a lot of fungus and this sort of thing in this area. That's the word I'm looking for. A lot of fungus, and it goes up in the fibrous area, and it destroys the shock absorber between the outside wall and the coffin bone. And so, is there any way? No, Dave, I wish there was. What we've done in the past is, number one, we've packed it with linseed oil and pine tar and axle grease. I use a lot of axle grease and kerosene. That a lot of the old cowboy ways I still use. And then we pack it up in there, and then we use a pad on top of that, and then we roll the toe so that the mule breaks over quicker in his walk. Instead of just going down, if you look on the front of the shoe, on a majority of mule shoes, you'll see how much more it's worn. They literally are tiptoeing. But there's only 3 points. It goes like this. There's only 3 points on a foot that actually fully contacts the ground. It's not the whole foot. It's the point in the front and 2 points on each side. It's almost like a diamond shape. And that's what actually contacts the ground itself. And so long story short, no, David, there's not anything you can do. It can be a pasture ornament, yes. But let me tell you, folks, when they start crippling up and they start laying down, they start getting sores and stuff from laying down, it's an awful, slow way to die. And unfortunately, a lot of people take these animals and they put them in kill pens. And then people in the kill pens, they don't know anything about what's going on. And then somebody else says, oh, I'm going to save Fluffy from the kill pen. And they end up with this crippling disease thinking they can fix it. Thousands of dollars with vet bills, yada, yada. And there's no such thing as a way to fix it, unfortunately.
Cool. So hopefully that gave you some of the information you need there, David. Obviously, it's probably not the answer you were hoping for, but I know that as soon as Steve finds anything else that might be a better solution, he's going to talk about it, and I know that that's probably something that we'd love to find. So we had Ryan Scott join us, and he says, good afternoon, Uncle. And he says, it's great coffee, especially on opening day.
That's my nephew. I love that kid. Unfortunately, he's too far away for me to hug his neck right now, but great. I took him on his first hunting trip and this sort of thing, and we we went over to New Mexico and hunted at a friend's ranch. The first 30 minutes of opening morning, after we had several good cups of that David Pingali coffee. Oh man, it's awesome. Anyway, we walked out to this post, and 280 yards away, we both dropped 2 elk, and that was the end of our hunting season. 30 minutes, but it was fun, you know.
David just chimed in. He says the coffee is on its way.
He's got one coffee called Zombie. It is incredible. I'll make sure Dave can get some Zombie, and then you'll be contacting Dave and ordering it because it is incredible. I'm gonna make sure I take it with me everywhere I go because I just can't continue to drink Folger's coffee anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't quite get up to the line of the Zombie coffee. Sharon Danenis, I think I said that right. Hopefully I said that right. Sharon just joined us. She says, hi, Steve. So we're glad to have you here, Sharon. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. David goes, it's just roasted. So it's on its way. It's just been roasted. And Randy Andreessen checked in from Facebook, and he had an interesting question, one that I don't think I've ever forwarded to you, one I've never heard you ask about. He says, what is your favorite book on horse and mule packing and why? Do you have any favorite books on horse and mule packing?
Actually, I like Joe Back's book on horse and mule packing. I prefer packing where we use a sawbuck and not a decker. Sawbuck has crosses front and rear on the saddle, and decker has round arches. And we use a lot of double diamond, box hitch, triple diamond, this sort of thing. But the book from Joe Back, he illustrates it. It's awesome. Good stories in there. But that's really good. Really good reading. Awesome reading. Smoke Elsner, that guy is, 86, 87 years old now, up in Montana, wrote a book on packing. I can still see Smoke Elsner the year he competed against me at Bishop. We packed 5 mules, saddled 3 horses, and went around a half-mile track in 5 minutes, 42 seconds. And Smoke was still there holding on to his cinches. Watch me going by after we just won, and we still laugh about that from time to time. But try that book. Of course, I've got some DVDs, 3 DVD set on packing. But I consider packing using a sawbuck. We've got both wood sawbucks that we sell and an adjustable pack saddle. But packing's my passion, and that's kind of where I started out with this saddle. It's a completely adjustable pack saddle. Pretty soon started telling me my measurements, how wide, how narrow, and that adjustable pack saddle was what taught me what to use on my riding saddles currently.
One of the things I really appreciated during the last clinic that we had out on the ranch was when you started sharing some of those old cowboy stories and started sharing some of the stories about packing. And I won't spoil the story about some of the more details about when you were doing that competition at the Bishop Mule Days. Of course, you're going to be there again coming up this spring here, and that's going to be a lot of fun. But that story and just the mules following you out rather than doing their thing, it was pretty good. So I ain't going to spoil it. Folks, you got to come out to Queen Valley Mule Ranch, Trail Riding with Confidence. I think it's March 17, 18. Come out. Steve will tell a whole bunch of good stories. You can ask him to talk a little bit more about the competitions at Bishop Mule Days. But the thing that we're going to get into now is Carrie Ratazik. I hope I said that correctly. I'm just horrible at last names. Carrie, it's nothing personal. I'm so glad you're here. And the question is, have you ever spayed any of your Molly mules, Steve?
Oh my goodness, I have not. I know a couple guys that used a marble and inserted it in there. Yes, a glass marble. And what she's trying to get away from is sometimes, and it's rare, it's really rare for a Molly mule, but they can just flat be witchy. But I've never had a Molly mare be witchy. It's always good around people, good around other animals, and be fine. But I'm going to tell you, the people that I know that spayed their Molly mules, I don't know of anybody that was happy with the end result. I don't know of any. Unfortunately, it goes back to disposition, and you don't always see that when you're buying the mule that particular season. But when they come into season, some of those mules that are really bad, they literally don't have just one particular season. 2 or 3 times a month, they can be the mule from hell, you know.
So there you go. Hopefully that answers a little bit there.
Yeah, I've never met anyone yet with end result was good results.
So hopefully that advises you there, Carrie, and gives you a little bit more information as you're kind of deciding what it is you think, what it is you want to do, and developing your thoughts there. Sandy chimed in right after that, and she says, I saw a live post from you about your pellets for mules. You said mules don't need alfalfa, but the first Ingrid on the pellet, you talked about Lakin Lite. Is alfalfa? Can you explain that for me? Thanks.
You bet. Now, what I mean by alfalfa is feeding a whole flake of hay where your protein levels and your carbohydrates levels are really high. Notice on there the amount of alfalfa that's there. It's minimal, especially when it compared to a whole flake of hay. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. If you overfeed them and feed nothing but a flake of hay morning and night, oh my goodness, the fat pockets will start becoming heavy on the mule's back, and the disposition of the mule is going to change tremendously. If you look at my article in my website called Mules Cannot Stand Prosperity, you'll see where a really nice mule left here and happy and doing good. I had a feeding program with Lakin Lite, and then boom, he turned into his monster. So that's what I'm talking about. Yes, it does say alfalfa, but it's a minimal amount. You will not see a mental change that I would be aware of, and I've fed hundreds, thousands of pounds of this stuff to mules, not only here in Arizona but other places, and it also doesn't affect the fat pockets as well. So it's minimal.
Cool. I went ahead and I put a couple links in the comment section. I put one link to the talk about the feed talk about Lakin Lite. And then a nutrition program, so that's in the comments. And then I put a link to the Mules Can't Stand Prosperity article in the comments section as well. So thanks so much for the questions. Appreciate that. The next question that I have, Steve, I want to talk. You've mentioned it a little bit, but a question came in about Britchen, and this particular rider says that I don't have D-rings behind my cantle. Can I connect a Britchen to the back cinch D-rings? So what are your thoughts there? I know you always say you have to ride with the Britchen, not a crooper, because the crooper is only designed for 6 to 8 pounds, and that's bone. You don't want to break the mule's back. So you say always ride with the Britchen to keep the saddle from riding up. What if you don't have clips? What if you don't have rings on the back of your Britchen? Or back of your saddle?
Okay, number one, if you put it down on the rings on the side, it's going to pull the saddle right and left. The purpose of the two straps across the back that go right into the bars is to evenly help each bar stay in place. So it's really easy. You can go to a tack store and you can buy the clips and the D-rings and take those rosettes off the top and put these D-rings in with a couple of screws on each side, and be sure to use some silicone caulking with that as well, help them stay in place. But it's imperative that you have the two straps attached to each bar. That way they keep the saddle even. If you only have one strap in the middle of the saddle, that's kind of similar to a crouper, and you see your saddle moves right and left. That's what it does. So if you have only the one strap, it will allow the saddle to move right and left. But if you've got the two straps directly on the back of the bars, that will keep it from going right to left so severe, and will keep the saddle in place. So it only takes you, it's going to take you longer to go down to the tack store to buy the parts. It shouldn't take much more than 20 minutes. Just take the strings that are there and cut those off with those rosettes, pull it off, put your new clips in there with the rosettes, and those clips a lot of times will have strings too, and you can attach them and away you go.
So a follow-up question that came in also says, I've seen a lot of people attach the bottom straps to the front cinch D-rings, but in your picture they're attached to the front D-rings of the saddle. The issue I'm trying to resolve is my mule getting gouged in her armpits by the cinch. What do you have to say there?
Okay, number one, people are doing that so that they can keep the cinch back, and you can't do that. The purpose of those two straps is to go up underneath the D-rings. They keep your saddle from going side to side. That's its purpose, okay? If you have a saddle that's going up underneath the cinch, there's going to be several questions I'm going to ask you. Number one, what are you using for a saddle blanket? Because if you're using a wool pad, it's going to make that saddle go forward. Read or watch my YouTubes. You'll see a demonstration using a wool pad. Second thing, if you're riding in a horse saddle, that twist on the 6th and 7th rib is going to cantilever on top of that fat pocket. And if we don't have that back cinch tight, it's going to cantilever like this, and it's going to creep forward. If you notice your front cinch on your saddles, it's always at an angle. And if you tighten that up, it's going to pull the saddle forward, and the saddle's going to go up underneath the leg. Okay? I don't care how many times you move it, because of the way the mule is made. V-shaped in the shoulders, carrying their weight down low, automatically has the donkey bone structure. That saddle is going to go forward. So, and the downside is, if you're using the Britchen to hold back the cinch, you probably noticed you had a lot of rubbing and losing a lot of hair and getting a lot of sores from that. The Britchen is only the secondary part to hold your saddle into place. It is not your primary. Your primary is your rear cinch. It's imperative it's tight.
Cool. I'm going to put a link in the comment section to your saddle video or the saddle pad video where you're having folks push the saddle and demonstrating wool versus demonstrating your saddle pad, and people can see for themselves what a difference that makes and how it does exactly what you're talking about here. Kevin came in with a question. We bought your mule rider's martingale, and the video shows starting out in the Roundpen doing groundwork. Do you have advice for getting started with no Roundpen?
The nice thing about a Roundpen is it keeps them from hiding in corners. What you don't want to do is put a lunge rope on them, because as you're pulling on the lunge rope, you teach them to run through their shoulder. That's one of the downsides. What's his name?
It's Kevin Albright.
Kevin, that's one of the downsides of using horse techniques, especially with a lunge line, because as you pull on that mule's nose, he's going to run through his shoulder, and you're creating a bigger monster. You can conceivably just put the mule, number one step, put the mule in any kind of pen that you got, preferably not an arena, but 20 by 20 pen, and just turn the mule loose in there. What we're looking for is the head down, nose on the vertical, balanced. Top of the hip, top of the wither, top of the hip. Top of the hip, top of the wither, top of the ears, all the way balanced. And that's what this martingale is going to do. So to answer your question, you can put him in a 20 by 20 stall. The downside is when you do go to move the mule around, it's going to hide in the corners. So you don't want to pressure him a lot, but it really works good in a round pen. A 20 by 20 is kind of small. If you can put it in a bigger one, that'll be fine. But you want to be able to be in there, and you want to have them go. You like to have them be from a walk to a trot and stay framed up.
So Sharon chimed in. She goes, all mules should have your pad. Steve, mine never moves. I butchered that. All mules should have your pad. Steve, mine never moves. So thank you so much, Sharon. Appreciate that. Aaron Ireland just wrote in a question. What are your thoughts on mini mules? A local trainer recently said they are good for nothing, etc., and a disgrace. I have a young one here that we plan to start and train for our little boy. The way I see it, I could get him a naughty Shetland pony that will be a pain in everyone's rear end, and we have one of those too, or a nice stoic steady mule. Can't see what the issue is, bred out of a well put together pony. I love our little mule, just wish big saddle miles were easy to come across here in Australia. So what are your thoughts there?
Isn't it amazing how these trainers will put the blame on the mule?
Yeah.
It's the mule's fault. But as soon as you point at that mule, 3 more fingers here. Listen, we had a kids camp up in Prescott that I was part of, Uncle Bud Brown's kids camp, Friendly Pines Camp. Get a chance to go over there and click on it sometime. You'll see mini mules. And them mini mules are making them kids happy. They're pulling around wagons and stuff. We even had some of them in the saddle. They'll be fine. The downside of the mini mule is dependent on his stride. He'll have a hard time keeping up with the bigger ones. But the mini mules that I've worked with, I've been pretty happy with them. But I know how to speak mule.
I know that we had we've been active on Instagram. And what are some of the fun things that folks can do with some of these minis?
Oh. in LA, we had a whole pack string with specially made pack sawbucks and this sort of thing, and strung them together just like a 5. So you can take them and pack back in the mountains and walk alongside of them. Hooking them into a pony cart or to a cart is awesome. You can do lots of things with that. And I'm going to tell you, these little boogers are stout. I know a lot of clowns use them for stuff. Oh, by the way, out here in Florence Junction, the federal prison there has a wild horse and donkey program, of which I'm helping them with. Mm-hmm. And hey, if you want to get a donkey already driving in a cart, already knows what it's like to go across water and everything, go to that website. You'll see it in the Florence Junction Wild Horse or Florence Prison Wild Horse Program. Contact me, and I can get you the information on how to get a donkey already started, variety of sizes, ready to go. Pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm looking up the link right now. I'll make sure that I've got Arizona Corrective Industries Wild Horse Program. I'll make sure that I got the right one, and then once I've got the right one, I'll share that out. So a couple more questions. So hopefully that answers your question there, Aaron. The reason why I mentioned Instagram is because that's one of the things that Steve had said. He's like, they make great pulling little carts around. Can be a whole lot of fun. So that's really great. So here's a question that I had. And it tails in with a question that Sharon from Facebook sent over. So my question, and then I'll get to the other question, is how do you measure a mule? How do you measure a donkey? This is something I've never heard you talk about. When somebody asks a question, what should I look for? You'll say, oh, this measurement, that measurement. Are there multiple different types of measurements? Is there one measurement to go? Like, what measurements do people need to pay attention to when it comes to their mule, their donkey, tack, things like that?
Well, as far as height, you hear us say 14.3. And what that amounts to is you take the front leg down at the hoof, and you put your hand just like this. And that's 1, and then you put your hand in the next place. That's 2, 3, 4, 5. Go right on up to 14, and 3 fingers. 14.3. So that's one way you can do it, with your palm of your hand flat like this, like that. And then as you take your hands up, one on top of the other, you'll come up, and when you come to the top of the wither, when you come to that last one, you say 14, and then maybe you can add 2 fingers or 3 fingers. It'll be 14.2 or 14.3. That's your height. The other way you can do it, of course, is to take and put a measuring tape alongside with a broom handle across the top and come up with a 64, 62 inch. But out west, we measure hands. Out east, in the south, they measure inches.
Okay, that's really, really helpful. I've always heard you talk about hand measurements and stuff like that. I didn't know what it meant. I just kept filming on the camera. So, so the question then that Sharon has, she says, I need a Britchen for my new mule. She's about 15 H8. So is that hand height?
Hand height, yeah.
There we go. I'm learning already. She's about 15 HH. But is nowhere near the size of a draft mule. I see the Britchen comes in 2 sizes, so she's talking about your Britchen. Do you think that the larger Britchen will be a fit or too big, and how long does it take when ordered? So when ordered, you ship it out pretty much the next day or the next
we
business
have
day. So
we have
that
leather
answer.
and
But then
beta
we're
in
talking
stock.
about sizing it up.
Yeah, we have both beta and leather in stock. We've got them there. Here's what we don't do, Dave. People will give me measurements and say, this is the measurements. And then I send them that according to their measurement Britchen. Well, it's not working. And so I finally give up on that. I use what I've done for 40 years. And I give you extra straps. So your quarter straps, you're going to have them longer. If you've got a 15-hand mule, this Britchen is going to be bigger straps-wise, but not the butt plate that goes around the back. That butt plate's pretty much going to fit everything from about 15 hands up to 18 hands around the back. And the smaller one is for your smaller animals that are the 14.5, 14.2 down. And that is, again, it's the butt plate that we're interested in. All the other straps are longer, so that you'll have extra to cut off. But we've got them in stock. The nice thing about beta, there's no maintenance to it. With leather, you have to make sure you constantly keep it oiled and clean, because when salt gets on that leather, it eats it up and it goes to cracking.
You're a big fan of beta, and I know that, 1, it's stronger than leather, and 2, you say, I'd rather spend my time out riding. I'd rather spend my time doing the things that I love, not maintaining leather. Some people like leather. Some people like the look of leather, which is why you continue to provide, certain things in leather. But I know you're a huge fan of beta. What's the strength of beta again?
It's 650 psi per square inch compared to 250 psi per square inch on leather.
So there you go. I mean, some people like the look, but it definitely is a lot easier. Sandy Ackley had a really nice comment. She says, I ran across 2 of your good friends, Eric Palmer and Sue White. It didn't take them long before they let me know the days of riding my horse saddle should be over. One ride in Eric Palmer's mule saddle, he proved it to me. Thanks so much. We love hearing that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that Eric, I think you said he's on right now.
He has been on. I don't know if he's still with us. He was on right at the beginning. As soon as we went live, he was there.
Yeah, he's really changed around. He's learned from some other clinicians and some different things. And I went over there and spent a couple of days with him. We had a little clinic and this sort of thing. And he ended up buying a saddle that I had custom made for me. Mm-hmm. He ended up buying that. And then his wife ended up buying my wife's custom made saddle. We never had them on mules. I had them made, and it was to my designs what I wanted to do for all of my hardware and this sort of thing. And they ended up getting them. Anyway, long story short, you watch Eric That guy will throw my saddle on a mule and not tighten up cinches and climb in the saddle, and the saddle not move.
Yep.
You know, when he did that, that blew me away.
That's
he kept
becoming
saying,
par for the course with the saddles.
Yeah. He kept saying, all these naysayers are saying, it don't work, it don't work. He said, I decided to show him. So he threw that saddle on there and climbed on there, and he says, I've had this saddle on a lot of mules, never found a mule yet. And Sue White, by the way, she's awesome. She's actually one of my apprentices. I trained on her a bunch of years ago, and she rides a lot of mules, and she's got nothing but my saddles. And the proof ends up, especially professionals, they're going to spend a lot more time in the saddle, and they know how a mule moves.
Yeah.
They know when a mule is sore, you know. And so there you are. End result, I'm glad that lady ran into Sue and Eric, and maybe they helped him out a little bit. That's great. I love to seeing that on the trail. Let me help you. Wonderful.
Yeah. Well, we got a couple more, and then we'll wrap up here. Got a question come in talking about how to find an experienced farrier. Now, obviously, this is a geographic question. The people who asked, it was Cindy, and she's in Cave Creek, Arizona, so she knows that you know people around here locally. But the way that I want to ask that question is, what do people need to be aware of when they're looking for a farrier so they know that, okay, this is someone I can trust, this is someone who I can listen to, this is someone who's going to lead me the right way? What are some of the things that you would say folks need to look for in a good farrier?
Well, you know, one of the downsides of farriers is trying to even find a farrier. They don't show up on time and things like this, and it's tough. But I can also, in their defense, also say that you get into some of these rough horses or rough mules and this sort of thing, they may not be on time all the way. But let's go on back to this. When you're talking to your farrier, you want to ask them, tell me how important balance is. And then the next thing after that is, how often should I shoe my mule? And don't ever let anybody tell you you don't have to shoe a mule, because mules get contracted feet and you can have mess of problems. So ask them about shoeing, and then see if always, do you have some people that you're shoeing mules for that I can talk to? If they want to text me, I can text them a shoer in the East Valley here. His name is Sean, and he can do some shoeing for, and does a good job.
Can folks do their own shoeing? Should they start investing in their own shoeing? Yeah,
absolutely. They can do their own shoeing. It's with patience, they can do it. I've got that one video out about shoeing a mule, but it's time, it's patience, learning balance. Once you learn how to use that rasp and them nippers, it goes pretty simple. I've got a lot of my clients that actually are trimming and shoeing their own mules now.
You did a clinic. That's what that video is of. I was here that day. It was years back, and it was a cold morning. But you put the entire thing together in a clinic, and that's where that video comes from. Is that clinic you did at Queen Valley Mule Ranch? It's a good one too. Lots of good information. You want to talk real quick? We had a question come in from Cheryl on Facebook, and she's asking about the correct placement, the correct tacking of a breast collar for a mule. Any pointers for Cheryl as she's starting to get this animal fitted out?
You bet. One thing you want to remember, Cheryl, is that mules are very lateral when they're walking. So every time that shoulder hits that breast collar, it's saying to the saddle, stay here. The downside of this is that mules are V-shaped in their shoulders, and if you're using a horse breast collar where it attaches into rings in the saddle, or a pulling collar, which is the worst one, that attaches up in the pommel, anything that's attached hard and fast is going to pull that saddle forward. So we've got a link we could probably send you on where I talked about breast collars and showed how mine worked. Mine is attached into the pommel, but if you look at it with the strap attached around the horn, and as the breast collar moves back and forth, it gives with the animal. The only time it's going to pull on that saddle is if I'm dragging a calf to the fire or I'm going up a hill. So if I'm dragging something or going up a hill, then it works. But if you're using a pulling collar, that is the worst collar you can do. And you want it to fit right along the shape of the neck. Right along the shape of the neck. If you do a flat one, it's going to inhibit the shoulders. If you do the one that goes over to the D-rings, you're going to inhibit the shoulders. And you'll even watch your mule where they get tired of the pain and pressure. They'll start short striding, getting the ball up underneath themselves in the front of him.
Yeah, going back to the way that mules display their discomfort, mules display the things that are causing them pain. It's subtle in a lot of cases, but it's very real. And so, yeah, it's a pretty cool thing at the Why Does My Mule Do That clinic last month. You demonstrated your breast collar and the way that it works, and I don't know all the terminology, but yeah, it's really crazy. So on the saddle in the front, where is that, the pommel? Is that what that's called?
Yes.
So there's the pommel, but there's a little gap down here, and so you tie a little strap, and then the breast collar comes around, and so this is the strap right here, and it goes inside of that, and so as they move back and forth, that strap or that breast collar can slide back and forth. And you demonstrated it right in front of folks. And I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, that's brilliant. Like, that just makes sense, because you don't want that thing pulling back and forth, causing all that pain. So, yeah, we do have a video of that because I just recorded it. So I'll make sure that we get that up on YouTube so folks can see, because it really is it's like a neat little trick. Honestly, that's how I feel about it when I watch it. It's a neat little trick that does something really awesome for the animal. Let's see.
And Dave, we might also mention there, it's imperative you have both a breeching and breast collar, because what happens is going down the trail, your cinches do loosen up. And if you have a properly adjusted breeching and breast collar, when the cinches loosen up, the breeching and breast collars keep that saddle into place. And it's imperative that you have it there.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about this. I just want to ask it again, see if there's anything that you want to tack on to it. No pun intended. But this was from Yolanda in the Netherlands. So international, Yolanda asks, how do I find the right Britchen? So obviously you sell a Britchen. There's other Britchens out there. What do I really want to look for in a Britchen? Okay.
Number one, you want two straps coming from the back. You want two straps coming from the back of the saddle off of each bar, coming to what's called a hip safe. And it's a wide strap. You can see it on my webpage. It's a wide strap, about 10.5 inches wide by about 2.5 inches thick. And you want it rounded on the end so it doesn't shave hair. And then the next part is the two straps coming from there, which are the hip plates straps that adjust your breeching. So you want a breeching, you want to adjust it according to your terrain. If you're going down a steep mountain, you're going to lower the breeching. If you're just riding along flat ground, you're going to use the breeching up. So that hip plate is extremely important. And then the actual butt plate itself, I like to, on my leather, round the edges and use shap leather. And then on my beta, I use beta that are rounded on the edges, because what happens is on the edges is what actually shaves the hair, especially when we come out of winter and into summer. You got a lot of hair and it really shows up really tough. So the hip plate's the main part. And go to my website, you'll see a picture of the hip plate.
So I've got two more questions. Hopefully they'll be pretty quick. The one question is comes in from Paul. He says, I'm looking for a gaited mule for trail riding. Any thoughts or preference on a mare mule versus a horse mule? Thanks.
I have no preference. Again, it comes to disposition. Yeah. I've owned a lot of molly mules. I've trained a lot of molly mules. I've seen sorry molly mules, and I've seen sorry John mules, and I've seen good in both. So, these people that say, they like a mare or a John mule, it just happens to be they hit the right disposition. It's just like the lady talked about earlier with spading her mule because she's kind of crabby. Well, that's one of those things. But I've also seen John mules think they're a stallion, So it's, it all depends on what you found. If you found the disposition you like, you go from disposition to confirmation, and from confirmation into training, and then it goes from there. And by the way, if you're going to be riding mountains and stuff, gaited ain't going to help you. You get back in them mountains, you get a single-footed mule will walk just as fast as a gaited animal.
So that's my question. When people ask these questions about a gaited mule, what is a gaited mule? I've never heard the definition of what that is. I don't know what that means. What is a gaited mule?
Gaited mule, basically, it's very smooth. You'll take the animation of the front end of a Tennessee Walker, and they really stride and move their legs very rapidly. And then you take the animation of a Foxtrotter, where the back end animates and really smooth, and the front end animates really smooth. Normally, you see on these animals left, front, right, rear. And so you don't have the shuffle that a mule does. A mule has a single foot where it's right side, left side, right side, left side. Watch a mule when he walks. Left front, left rear. Right front, right rear. You'll watch him. It's a single foot. And you get back in these mountains, and a gaited mule can't be animated and go really fast. That's one of the things that people like to buy gaited mules for, is because of the speed. Well, the downside is you can only go as fast as your slowest rider. And I can't tell you how many people have come really close to a divorce because he bought a gaited mule to fly, and she's got old Fluffy back here that just plods along, and she's happy with that. So, you either got to get yourself a good attorney or get you two mules that walk the same.
That's really, really good. I've heard a lot of them, but I haven't heard that one yet. That's really good. Last question. Bishop Mule Days. It's coming up. Darlene from Instagram says she wants to attend Bishop Mule Days. I put a picture out there of your belt buckle from Bishop Mule Days, mule skinner. And she goes, I'd actually like to come for that. Or we are actually coming to that. Any good advice of best place to camp? We have a camper we're bringing. And do you think we should plan on staying the entire time?
Oh, absolutely, stay the entire time. I tell you what I do. Of course, it's really changed since I did it back in the 90s. Back in the 90s, we had a lot of old guys that were long line driving, and you see them driving 10, 12 at a time with these. We don't see that no more because those old skinners are gone. But there's still lots of excitement. I usually show up Monday afternoon, and of course, the bishop, they give me places to camp and this sort of thing. So that's part of my package. So you just contact Bishop Mule Days. They have hundreds of places to camp. You're going to have, most of it's going to be where you have to have your own generator and own water and things like this. But they have trucks that come around that get you water. They have trucks that come around that pump your sewer. Lots of that. And that way you can be right close, because walking distance to Bishop Mule Days is awesome to do. If you try to drive from a campground outside the city and try to come in with all that traffic, oh my goodness, it's awesome. But yes, everybody needs to go to Bishop and see it one time. It's incredible to see.
That's awesome. Well, Steve, that's everything we've got for today. We'll get all the questions coming in. We'll organize them, and we'll do this again next week. What do you say?
Yes, let's do that. I'm awed. We started out with 500 or 600 people. Now we're up to about 4,500.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
The videos reached about 4,500 views, and it's pretty cool. And I think it just speaks to the fact that the mule and donkey folks are really starting to show folks what it's all about, and really starting to come on. And the more that folks are talking about them, the more that friends are advocating for them, the more people realize, hey, I think this is the way to go with me. I think this is the way that I need to go. So I'm glad to keep doing this. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm learning, and I know you're enjoying this too. So we'll keep doing it. Yeah. Folks, remember, you can come and participate or be a spectator for Steve's next clinic at Queen Valley Mule Ranch. It's coming up on March 17th and 18th, I think it is. It's that Saturday, Sunday. It's a 2-day clinic. It's trail riding with confidence. It's going to be a lot of fun. These clinics are always well attended, and I think there's like 3 spots left if you want to be a participant. So those participant spots fill up pretty quickly. Spectators, as many people wants to come, can come. So that information is on the website. If you have any questions about anything we've talked about, you can go back, watch the replay, or you can leave a comment, send us a message, reach out. We will find your question. We will find your message there, and we'll get back in touch with you. You can find us on YouTube, find us on Instagram, find us on Twitter, find us on Facebook. Wherever you are spending your time on your smart device or on the computer, we're probably there. So, Steve, thanks so much, and we'll see you next week, all right?
One more little thought.
Yeah.
You treat your wife like a mule, she'll never grow into be an old nag.
Sit with that.